This movie is for one of those like wanna be liberal feminist type dudes. You know, the pansies out there that can't turn the screwdriver right or left. Speaking of right is the right way to go. I'm telling you. I'm kidding. Right is not the right way to go. Go as far left as you can, and then go further. All right, especially if in the U.S. Here we go. This movie is not for me, but not for the reasons that I just try to disclose via that character. There's gonna be a lot of people, specifically men, that are like, "This movie sucks. It's a feminist, blah blah blah." And they're not necessarily wrong, but if they hate that because that's what it is, they need to look themselves in the mirror and just say, "I'm going to die alone," because that's the case. They're going to die alone or be with a wife that's never orgasmed. It's just, they're just not going to live a good life, meaning the wife. Yeah, but this movie's not for me, but for different reasons. It's just like artistically, it says things in a way that I agree with what's being said, but the way it's saying it is kind of like, yeah, I mean, you took the long way there, or you got really heavy-handed, and that's okay at times. I just think this whole movie is 2 hours of heavy-handedness and like long-winded ways of just saying something that we all understood the first time it was said. But anyway, here we go. This movie is obviously like a spin-off of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but more notably, I guess it's more based off the movie from the 1930s. I've never seen or read any property of Frankenstein's lore. Like I don't, not a creature I care too much about. But here we go. I haven't even seen the Addams Family, the cartoon or the actual show that was from way back when. Here's my synopsis. A century removed from his inception, Frankenstein's monster craves intimacy and romance. Here comes the bride. I thought that was nice. I did that. I did that. Okay, upon her resurrection, the bride is told that she's Frank's bride. Frank is Frankenstein's monster. She's told she's Frank's bride, which obviously completely robs her of her autonomy. Her self-discovery is slowly abandoned as the plot develops, but her actions inspire a feminist wave amongst the communities she enters. That clearly wasn't written. Yeah, whatever. Okay. The story evolves into a Bonnie and Clyde-esque tale, except their crimes are more circumstantial, if not downright accidental, more times than not. Our couple is often trying to outpace an angry mob. All the while, two detectives take interest in the commotion and chaos. So what you have here is like a bit of a crime thriller, a bit of a like, not even a rom-com, but a romance-focused movie, a creature flick. Not necessarily horror, but definitely the creature element here is kind of leaning into heavy in the first act, especially when like the bride is being concocted. Despite this having both style and substance, the bride never establishes itself as much more than a mess, too wild to ever weave a consistently compelling narrative. It's essentially a feminist fever dream, so its politics and message are rooted in real criticisms of our culture as it loudly condemns male predatory behavior, the Matilda effect, sexism, and other pertinent issues. The Matilda effect is actually something I learned via Instagram through like reels of dudes talking over women, talking over what the Matilda effect actually is. Irony, funny. But the Matilda effect is when men take credit for a woman's effort. And I think one of the cases of that is like a female scientist discovering something like DNA and a male getting their name on it. And there's a case or two of this in this movie as well. Okay, so that aside, however, its substance and inspired scenery can't overcome the unkept nature of the storytelling. I mean, for Christ's sakes, the bride has two personalities, one of which is Mary Shelley's ghost. Why? Who knows? And I'm not saying that as a spoiler. They tell you that in the first 45 seconds of the movie. Mary Shelley's ghost has possessed the bride character. And it makes for like amazing acting from that actress. I do want to say her name. Her name is Jessie Buckley. Apparently she was in some big movie last year. I saw most movies last year, but some Oscar nominee or type movie was what she starred in last year. But yeah, she's amazing in this. She has different accents, like acts differently physically a little bit. And kind of just like Two-Face in the Batman the Animated Series cartoon. Like she's twisting and she's someone else and back and she's the other person again. And they don't get equal screen time for the most part. She is the bride character, which is the character that like Frankenstein is mostly manipulating. Their relationship, Frankenstein or Frank and the bride is it's like one of a victim and her assailant, whatever. What is the victim in the whatever? He's using her. Obviously, he's created a narrative that benefits him and gives her, like I said before, no autonomy over the situation. She doesn't even know who she is, and he's telling her things she's not completely wrong. And there's like, I guess, a bit of a Stockholm syndrome situation because like I said, her self development is kind of stalled out in the movie, where you kind of feel like she's okay with what's happening, and I think that is a commentary in itself, sort of like this defeatism amongst, especially women of an older generation, that kind of just succumb to their circumstance and just give up. Like, it is what he says it is. I guess that's fine. She's not completely there, but I do think that's like a light criticism on people, like our parents' age. If you're my age, 28, you see your mom sometimes, maybe your dad even, but for this purposes, your mom, and you're like, why do you tolerate that? And it's like, because they think they're supposed to, maybe. Anyway, there's more heavy-handed stuff than that. I think at the center of this, like the origin of this is really like Frankenstein's monster. Frank is lonely. I think that's a commentary on the male loneliness epidemic. There's conversations to be had about that as like a legit thing. There's also like the whining online from like terrible men that say they can't find a partner. It's like, well, then be a better person. Loneliness is something that permeates throughout the whole culture. I think it's important to talk about that. It's not just men, but like what men do when they're lonely is completely dangerous and unacceptable in a lot of cases. So it's more important to talk about that to a degree, but also internally amongst men, not necessarily forcing women in that conversation all the time. Though I do think they have to be a part of that conversation. I started reading a book by Bell Hooks called The Will to Change. And she talks about how like women have to work with men in feminism to create the world we want to see. And I think that's important, but there is some stuff where you got to clean your own house up before you invite somebody in and help do more work. You know what I mean? Probably not. I just rambled. I ramble a lot. I'm a rambler. Okay, so The Bride has a split personality, as I said. One is the ghost of Mary Shelley. The other is, The Bride. And both of them are vulgar, like just completely inappropriate. But Mary Shelley's is like poetic and just rambles off nonsensical sequences of words. Almost as if like she's writing, I guess. Like, if you've written before, you kind of just like sometimes you talk out loud and you're like, synonym, and you kind of trying to find a word. I think that's what's happening there. I don't know. I really just don't understand the Mary Shelley element of this, because it does seem like her influence over the story is mostly as a narrator. She is like the more extreme side of The Bride, but The Bride's already pretty raunchy to begin with. I don't think she needs this thing she's fighting. But I guess Mary Shelley's narration also serves as like one of the more liberating angles of The Bride's story arc. I don't know. Jake Gyllenhaal's here. He plays like this actor, this vaudeville actor. Is it vaudeville or vaudeville? Vaudeville. I don't know. This V actor. And it's cool watching him because he plays an actor in old movies from like the 30s. And it's just like cool seeing him in the theater, but he's not in the theater as a character. He's on the screen, and it's like kind of, somewhat meta a little bit. Yeah. I mean, the best part about this movie, I think, is that Maggie Gyllenhaal is willing to take risks. I don't think they pay out for most of it, but she's willing to do absurd things and have cool visuals and kind of break up the storytelling, where at times, I'll be honest, there are moments where I'm like, is this real? There's a dance sequence and I'm like, is this happening? And based off how it blends into the story, I think it happened, but it makes no sense that it happened. And I'm like, okay, I mean, I respect the attempt. I just don't know if it works. But yeah, there's reasons to love this movie. I mean, it has things to say. Like I said, it's heavy-handed as hell, but those things need to be said. And, it's being said by a female director here. And the story also takes like its time to let you subvert your expectations, not necessarily as an audience member, but internally within the story. Like a lot of times in the story, characters assume a certain figure will be male, and it's not male, it's a woman. And it's like, oh, we need to look at ourselves and our society and think how we do that, ourselves, specifically as men. So it's like, yeah, there's stuff to learn here. I think it could have been said better. I'm giving this a 4.5 out of 10. Artistically, it's beautiful. For the most part, cool music in there. It really sets the mood of the 30s. I will say there's like setting differences. Like, okay, we're in Chicago, I think at one point, maybe Indiana briefly, New York. And I couldn't always tell the difference between like the vibe of the city. So some knocks for that, but it looks like it was maybe on a modest budget. So, no shade to that. But yeah, 4.5 out of 10. Maybe see it. I definitely think, you can find maybe a stronger narrative focused feminist movie out there. I always liked Promising Young Woman from a few years ago. I thought that was fantastic. Totally different movie, but like similar messaging. This to me is just a little indulgent, just like this review is. So I'm leaving you. Goodbye. 4.5 out of 10. Peace.